about how to enter carbon farm plans into the RCD Project Tracker. And we're going to go over just general how to enter both the plan, and then once you move into the implementation phase, we'll also talk about some of the nuances that may not be super obvious the first time around. So first, what you're going to do is you log in. If you don't already have a login, you can go to the help menu and request support, and then we can get you logged into your RCD. And today I have a partially entered project just so that I don't have to type while you're watching, but it will look the same for you. So there's some general instructions here on the front page. I encourage you all to read through them. I won't go through them all today. There's actually several general tutorials about how to enter projects. So we'll just kind of go into the basics. So the basics are, you have a primary resource area. So there's I think 7 different primary resources areas with several items underneath. And so all of the carbon farm plans should follow under this category. One thing we wanted to share is that there should be a naming process for how people enter the names of their carbon farm plans in to make it easier to find. For our RCD, we actually carbon with level of penalties. And so the other thing you'll have to decide is whether you have permission to use the ranch or landowner's name, or whether you want to call it like Carbon Farm Plan 1 or Carbon Farm Plan A. In this case, we have received permission to use their full name. And so we have Carbon Farm Plan and then the name of the farm here. In the project description, we just put something general about the property and about what's included in the plan. Something important is in the project stage here, there's a few different. For the carbon farm plans, the most important thing to decide between is whether it's in planning and design. So this is just if you've completed the plan but haven't started implementation. And the difference will be that you'll just be entering in your potential or expected performance measures or outcomes. However, if you've started implementation, you can choose implementation. So you'll have the ability to enter in actually completed projects, or you can do post implementation. So this is really if you're entering in a project that's already completely done or completed, and it won't ask you year after year to kind of enter updated information. So we have not done any implementation on this project yet, so we're going to choose planning and design. Yeah, and then you can choose a completion year if you want, or you don't have to. And then you just press save and continue. So the next is the geographic location. And the one thing to consider in geographic location, again, is if you have permission to show exactly where the property is, or if you want to give a more general location. So for here, we actually plotted a point on the map. You can see as we zoom in, it's actually where their property is for us. We have a little notes about where it's located, including and then it automatically populates the lat long. If you don't want to plot the point on the map, you can enter the lat long or say no location. And so you can also hide the project's location from most users being basically the public. So if you didn't want people to know exactly where it was, this is a way you can hide that location. Now you can get into a detailed location, and this is actually where you can draw the actual parcels. You can also upload GIS files. You do not have to use this feature, but if for some reason you did want people to know where things were, you can draw a line or a polygon on the map, and you just zoom in and use the tools over here. So the organizations part, so usually the RCD that wrote the plan or that is sponsoring someone to write their plan will be the lead implementer. The reason where you wouldn't do this is maybe you have a partner entity doing it, like Watershed or Land Trust. So there might be cases where you are working with a partner, and then you would just be the primary RCD. Next, we put in the assembly voting districts just so that we can tell districts, our legislators, that these are all the things that are happening in their district. So one of the things that we use here in Sonoma County is we have our plans part of the LandSmart program. So we've added that as a partner. You might also add, for example, NRCS. if you're working with NRCS. And a stakeholder might either be a private party, or say you were working with like Watershed or Community Alliance of Family Farmers. You can again add them here. So you would just say, you're taping it out. And choose it. So maybe we're working with RCD or something else and click add. Okay, and then you'll also have a primary project contact. So this will usually be someone within your own RCD. For us, this is the planner who most recently worked on the plan, or you can even put yourself as just the person who entered in the data. Okay, the other spatial information is you can put what watershed it is. You can either type by name or you can set it from the symbol location. Right here, we just set it from the symbol location, and it is in the Salmon Creek watershed, which is correct. Okay, and then here's the part where you're talking about expected accomplishments. So most of this will come from the table you enter in your carbon farm plan, the stuff that pops out of Comet Planner or other things. So one thing I see here in the projects that were entered that's missing is actually our 20-year GHG estimates. So in here you have their GHG annual. This is what we use when we are reporting on actual implementation. But generally, when we're trying to talk about what is the potential of the plan, we use the GHG reduction at cumulative 20 years. And you would click add. And then we would add the land use type, which in this instance is a farmer ranch. And this is sequestered carbon that you can also do avoided emissions. Say you're working with dairies or doing reduced tillage, and then you enter your value in here. I forgot to mention, and it's important for all of it, but especially when you get to this point, that it's really helpful to have your plan open. You'll be scrolling back and forth. So right now I'm taking some of the practices out of our plan. So I'm going to finish the 20-year GHG reductions, which was 258. Really just multiplying the annual. I took this table with the totals for the annual reductions and multiplied it by 20. So it's that simple. So that's my adding that expected value. So I see here we have some additional practices that haven't been entered yet. One is prescribed grazing. And then so I'm going to go back in here into conservation practices, and these are organized by NRCS conservation practice numbers. So for the grazing one, it's right here, and I'll go back, and that was 26.7 acres. I'll check my numbers because I already forgot. Yep. And then the other one I didn't see in here yet too was the compost application to 1.6 acres. So I'll go in here. 808 is the soil carbon amendment. Before, for grazing, people use mulching. 808 is a new carbon, is a new NRCS practice. I already forgot the acreage, so I'm going to go back and look. 1.6. Okay, so you'll see that some of these do have carbon benefits, but we also in our carbon farm plans we include practices that are also just like something you would find in a regular conservation practice. So for grassed waterway and filter strip, these don't have necessarily carbon benefits, but we still include them in our expected accomplishments. And since we are not doing implementation right now, one thing I'll just say is when you change your project from planning to implementation, you'll have a whole nother row underneath here so you'll have all of your expected performance measures, and then you'll be able to enter by year your other conservation practices. And here, instead of using GHG cumulative 20 years, you would use this GHG annual. So if you could see from this project, depending on which practices you implemented and how much, you can go back into your table here. Okay, so that's it for our expected accomplishments right now. So I will save and continue. Okay, so in the budget part, there's a couple things to note. One is if the budget varies year by year, or it's a one-year project, so that means that maybe some years is we do a little implementation, some years do a lot. This is the one you would choose. If your budget is the same every year, which really wouldn't be for this type of project, this is like maybe if you have funding for educational program and you get $20,000 every year to go into classrooms or something that helps just simplify the budgeting process. So we'll say the budget is going to vary year by year, or it's a one-year project. This particular project was funded under RCD Project proposal, as well as it was WCB. And so we have two things here. We have secured and targeted. So secured is the funding that you had for this program. And then an interesting thing for this is you can actually put no funding source identified yet. So for instance, if you say we spent, and I don't have the budget in front of me right now, but $5,000 from WCD and another $5,000 from NRCS to develop this plan. What we could do is that in this no funding source, we know from our estimates that it would take about $100,000 to fund all of the implementation practices. And what this does is when you have a, this project will generate a fact sheet and it will say that you're still looking for $100,000. So we've actually had people reach out to us to fund our projects through this process. And so, yeah, so if you knew, like say you had applied to NRCS for some cost share, maybe under EQIP or something, but you haven't secured it yet, that's what you would use the targeted funding for. So this is funding you've already applied for, but you just don't know for sure if you're going to get it. So this is basically you can track by year what your funding sources are. Since we are in the same year that this is reported, it looks like this. But if you say once we change this to implementation, we can enter in the funding every year. So say for instance they applied for zero footprint for compost application next year or NRCS EQIP, we could add those funding sources in here to keep track of the funds that were spent on this property. Oh, looks like I have an error. It looks like I need to have a 0 in here. So there's nothing, you just have to put a 0. Okay. $2021, we'll just put those same numbers again. This is what total. Okay, so in additional information, we have this classification. And what the classifications are used for is really, it's a public facing way for people to search for projects. So this is where you get to enter in like the kind of multi-objectives in your project program. So in the beginning, in the overview, where you just have to choose one type of project. And in here, you get to actually choose the multiple benefits that your project may be having. So for this particular one, we chose climate change. We also did healthy watersheds. Some of the work that this project is doing will be improving water quality in a salmon bearing stream, and then also supporting local farms and their sustainability. So this was already typed in. You may choose endangered species if you know that the project will also support that. Or if you're doing a lot of tours or field trips, you might add education. We also sometimes add land preservation if it is in partnership with a land trust or other entity. Here is where you can add photos. Make sure you at least add one because it makes the fact sheet look a lot better. And you can actually add several and then choose a key photo. You can get more information in this on the photos in the help under tutorials, under trainings here about how to enter a project. We already have our project loaded. In this way, if you do have permission from the landowner to upload your full carbon farm plan, you can do that. If you have maybe just parts of it you want to upload, you can do that here. And you can also add notes. And this can kind of help you remember, like, you know, we hope to do more work with this or things that you might want to remember. And then if you have some people maybe have more information on their website, or maybe I know in one of our projects, one of our staff did a story map, so you can enter in the information here and add links. And then that is all the things. And when you're done, you just press submit. And what it will do is it'll send it to whoever is assigned on your team to approve projects, and which is nice just to make sure you didn't have any errors in entering. And then you'll get notification that the project was approved when it's approved. So once you enter it all in, you can see all of the information kind of in one spot. And once the project is approved, I'll go to a different proof. It will create a fact sheet. Oh, you can do it here too. So in the viewing, you may decide, oh, you know, this looks kind of confusing, so maybe I can go back in and change things. And you can see here, this is a feature that was added. You can see like, okay, we've secured this much funding to do the plan, but now we need all this funding to implement it. And this is really important when we're communicating to the larger community, like both what is the carbon potential, which is kind of, this is a really important number in this, and also how much money do we need to really implement it. So you can see we're at a new carbon farm plan, Bodega Pastures. We have a planning start date of 2018. So we've actually hit 3 years of implementation so far. So I'm going to just go ahead and skip all this information and go all the way to accomplishments. I did notice in here, one of the things I wanted to talk about was like co-benefits in the performance measures, which I didn't talk about last time. One of the ones that it seems to be important is actually water soil holding capacity. And so we actually have this under water conserve. So you can see that there is increased soil water holding capacity. And again, this is kind of the drill. And what I have here is I have our little our carbon farm plan chart in here. So we have our soil water holding capacity for all of the practices for the whole plan. And since this is expected, we will just use this number right here, which is 2,490 gallons. You know, this is acre feet. I have to actually double check what the units are. Yeah, acre feet. So we have 22.83 acre feet if all of these practices are implemented. The co-benefits that's often used with compost application. The other thing that I wanted to say is really important for
wait, Fred, I don't know if it matters if that's accurate, but there's a separate tab on that spreadsheet. Soil water. And then but this is for the whole ranch. At 31.
Okay, 37.76. What was the other thing for?
I don't know. That looked like it was carryover from like the L Ranch plan practices.
Okay. Okay. Well, we will just start recording again. So in the soil water holding capacity here under water conserved, we actually have 37.76. Okay, the other one is like if you have wildlife or water quality improvement. So this one, or riparian planting or reforestation. So I think that there's other co-benefits that are important to track outside of the agricultural practices themselves, which don't actually say a lot about the environmental improvement that some of these practices have. So you may have, for instance, habitat restoration or creation. So this could be in the riparian area. You could have nitrogen reduction, which would be water quality improvement, as well as phosphorus. You may add a planning document, which I think we've already done. Plants installed. So say when we get to the implementation phase, or even in the planning, you can put the number of plants you intend to plant. You can also do sediment load reduction if that seems to be something. There's a lot of other special status species or stream corridor restored. So those are some of the common ones that are co-benefits associated with carbon farm plans that are important to consider. Can go back here to the practices in this plan. So there is riparian restoration, 0.96 acres. So I might go back in here and just put and so it is in linear feet, so you may have to do some, because this is in acres, and so you may have to change and use your mapping to figure it out. So I'm just going to put it. Okay, so then the next thing that I really wanted to get to is the reported accomplishments. Oh, I forgot to save. Oh no. Oops. Okay, anyhow, I'll have to go back and fix that. So you can see we started implementation in 2019 and 2020, and I'm actually going to add 2021 because we did some more compost application this year. So I'm going to go in here to agricultural practice in acres. Oh, it's already in there. So I'm going to add reported value for 2021. Wait. We did 15.8 acres. And then remember, along with that, you're going to want to add the annual GHG reduction. So the associated. So here we actually use local peer reviewed data, which is the Riles et al. So that's why you would choose that over comment planner, which is the other most common one people use. Sequestered. So that is how you add reported values. And so say we actually did some in 2020, you can add all the ones in different years and make sure, like I did earlier, that you save your change. Forget something is happening here. Okay, so folks, you're going to want to make sure you check the boxes for the years you have no information to report instead of the years you do have information to report. And looks like that actually worked. So in your expenditures, again, we don't need to go through much detail, but you can actually go through by year and add in the funding sources. So for instance, in this 2021, we use zero footprint. The compost application, and I believe they got 20,000. Okay, and then here we have not yet chosen other classifications, so I would choose climate change, healthy watersheds, and local farms. So you do actually have to type in information here in order for it to let you save. And for the purposes right now, I won't do that. But I think that's everything you need to know about implementation projects and for co-benefits.